Lange was born in Hoboken, New Jersey in 1895. At the age of 7, she contracted polio, which caused her to limp throughout her life permanently. When Lange was 12, her family was evicted from their home. Her father vanished, and her mother, she, and her younger brother were forced to take lodging with their grandmother in Manhattan. She was a distracted student, but somehow managed to graduate from high school. Like many artists, Lange started with no knowledge of art, or specifically photography, but was determined to pursue a career in the art field. After graduating from high school, she took a job in a portrait studio, first answering phones and later retouching photographs. Soon she learned how to operate big studio cameras in a darkroom, then enrolled in a photography class in Columbia University. Later on, she and a friend decided to travel the world, which unfortunately led them to be stranded in San Francisco where their money was stolen. Lange persevered and took a job at a photography counter and eventually opened up her own studio, where she met her now divorced husband, Maynard Dixon, and later bore 2 sons, John and Daniel Dixon. In 1929, Lange and her family moved to New Mexico due to the stock market crash, and she was forced to stay at home with her sons while her husband went to work. Soon after, Lange and Maynard were divorced. As events unfolded in Lange's life, she felt compelled to distract herself by going back to work and taking portraits of her wealthy clients. According to Advocacy Through Images Dorothea Lange, by doing so, she became more and more acutely aware of the poor and unemployed people all around her. She took her camera and headed for the slums, and over the ensuing months found herself spending more and more time there. Little did she know this would be the start of a new chapter in life. She documented the migrant workers during the Dust Bowl with her new husband and economist Paul Taylor. She also documented the conditions of the Depression-era poor for the Farm Security Administration, and soon took pictures of Asian Americans and Japanese internment camps during World War II. Lange received the Guggenheim Fellowship Award and became the first woman to receive this award in photography. Unfortunately, she had to relinquish her fellowship after working for the War Relocation Authority, documenting the internment camps. She was commissioned for Life magazine numerous of times, taught in the California School of Fine Arts, and her work can be seen displayed at the Arts Institute of Chicago and the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Lange's health declined through most of the 1950s and 1960s, and she died of esophageal cancer in 1965.
In my opinion, Dorothea Lange's social and economic involvement was significant. The reason why was because of her photography. Her talents were first used to document the new agricultural policy in the late 1920s and early 1930s. But when the Great Depression was affecting the same communities she was documenting, her objective was not only to document the poverty and effects of the Great Depression, but also to show the agricultural system from where the crops came from. She then began to document racism in the South going into the early 50s and towards the end of her career.
The majority of Dorothy's work consisted of innovative technology techniques. For example, during the Depression era, she made sure that she really made an emotional appeal to her audience by capturing the reality of these groups and the conditions that these people were living in. She took pictures of farm workers, displaced families, and in post-war efforts to wake up America to the thousands of families who were struggling during this time.
Dorothea Lange's photographs documented the negative effects of the Depression on Americans, particularly the rural, poor, and migrant farm workers. Lange's work was powerful in its effort to portray the personal side of the Depression's misery as the individual families she worked with humanized the country's crisis. She also introduced systematic racism as she documented Filipino and Mexican farm laborers forced into relocation and internment.
This is the Mochita Family. I believe this photo was captured in May 8, 1942. It's a black and white portrait, and the focal point is obviously the family. It was probably taken with a film camera, like this one, the Graphic Super D, which is kind of a hybrid between the field camera and then the TLR. Lange is very good at taking photos that are somewhat implied about what's going on during that time. And here, the Mochita family are being sent away to an internment camp, and you can tell by their small amount of luggage and the name tags they were given by the government. Their expressions seem confused and not really having a good time. And she was very good at capturing those emotions.
I chose to depict one of Dorothy's most iconic photos in American history that first appeared in the pages of San Francisco newspaper in 1936. This image is unique in the way it symbolizes the hunger, poverty, and hopelessness endured by so many Americans during the Great Depression. The photo was taken at a camp of migrant farm workers in Nipomo, California. Lange was working for the federal government's Resettlement Administration. Later, the Farm Security Administration, also known as the FSA, the New Deal-era agency, created to help struggling farm workers. Her and other FSA photographers would take nearly 80,000 photographs for the organization between 1935 to 1944. Her work helped wake up many Americans to the desperate plight of thousands of people displaced from the drought-ravaged region known as the Dust Bowl.
And the picture I have picked is the Pledge of Allegiance at Raphael Elementary School. The reason why this picture stood out to me was because of the diversity. In the front, you have Asian Americans. Towards the middle and the back, there are some African American students. And in the back, we see the teachers. The effects of black and white gives us is pretty amazing because we get to see the different shades of black and white and what I would believe to be a colorful picture because of an elementary setting. This picture was taken right before the attack of Pearl Harbor, which had started World War II. And once World War II began, Asian Americans were thought less of and were even put into Japanese internment camps, aka concentration camps.
And a family in Pittsburgh County, Oklahoma, forced to leave their home during the Great Depression, documents a larger family walking alongside a dirt road with their strollers and belongings. By the way the individuals are dressed, it can be inferred that they are of the working class. They don't have many items with them, and it looks like they are out on a long journey. The angle Lange uses is at eye level, so we can see them walking towards us from her perspective. We can also see how long the path goes, for which it looks like it has been a long journey for the family so far. We can see the man hiding his eyes behind his hat, possibly because he is embarrassed that his family was forced to leave their home. Focusing more on this man than his family behind him, we can assume that the work he was doing for his family wasn't enough to support them enough to keep them all afloat. He is shameful and would rather not discuss that with his family.